So fee waivers are one of the other foundational principles of the school fees rules. What we're going to talk about a little bit today is the process that's needed for fee waivers and some of the requirements that go along with that. Now, each LEA needs to have a process for how they're going to be handling their fee waivers. And a lot of it's just up to you guys about how you're going to actually handle the process for it. Is it all going to be through the vice principal? Is it going to be handed to the front desk secretary to bring to that person? That's all up to you guys, how you will actually handle that. But you need a process, and that process needs a few things in it. You need to designate at least one administrator at each school to handle school fees. Who that is, that's up to you. There should be someone of an appropriate level to handle it. I'm guessing at most schools, the front desk secretary should not be making the final decision on fee waivers. But who is the right person? Again, that's for you guys to decide, but you need to actually make a decision and have that designated at each school. Whatever process you set up for handling fee waivers, you need to make certain it's an embarrassment-free, confidential process. One of the complaints that was mentioned in the injunction and has come up since is, oh, if you're a fee waiver student, well, you go stand over there in that line and they'll help you over there. Oh, you're a fee waiver student, here's your bright pink application form in the midst of all the white paper. Like, everyone immediately knows that you're poor and need help, sort of thing. So, embarrassment-free, confidential process. Some things that go along with that: students should not be involved in the fee waiver process. They shouldn't be involved in the handling of it or in any way. This should be the administration handling it. You need to let the students know what the process is. So when you're handing out the student registration materials that we previously talked about, your fee waiver policy should be in there. Well, needs to be in there. And they should know from that policy who to give the application to, what they can expect. So again, just let them know what it is, though most of that process is up to you to determine. And something that has come up with these is just documenting the waivers. We're going to be asking you guys how much was waived on a given year. You guys saw the certificates of compliance, and we'll be talking more about those later. But make certain you have a process in place to document the waivers that are coming in.
Do you expect to see, if you were to audit, would you expect to see the actual waiver papers that we have, either both those that have been denied and those that have been approved? Or is it enough in our finance system that we have designated fee waiver?
If we were to come in and audit this, we would want to see sufficient documentation, but no, you don't need to keep the actual hard copy of the application or keep the email they sent in. Their supporting documentation, if they send in their tax returns or they sent in a letter from the Department of Workforce Services, that would probably actually be inappropriate to keep. I mean, you guys don't want the added liability of people's other confidential information. Again, whatever process you have in place, just make certain it's sufficient to show we were granting fee waivers appropriately, and here's what we have. But again, you don't need to keep the email as long as a model that we came up with that's in the model policy is just write down so-and-so looked at the application. This is what they had attached to it. You don't need the actual attachment. Just say they looked at this. This is their decision.
If I could interject here just a little bit. The idea was that you didn't have to keep the financial documents the parent or guardian is giving you. So we don't want you guys to have that privy financial information. And so when they do the application, they fill it out and says, well, I fit because of these reason, and there's a check mark of the reason and so forth. But on the application, if they're not revealing or it doesn't have, you might have the documentation from the Workforce Services or any of that. So we don't want you to have to keep that backup documentation. But you probably would want to keep the application to say, this is the reason they're filing for the waiver under this one through 5 reasons. And then they've signed that for that reason. And so, but don't keep the underlying documentation, how they prove to you that they meet those qualifications.
stand corrected.
Do you want us to keep track of both the ones that were approved and the ones that were denied?
I think it's more important to keep the ones that are denied because they're the ones that are going to complain. So yes, and you can just write in your log or whatever the reason why, but you're probably giving that reason that you didn't meet the income, your documentation didn't prove that you met that. So have your reason there, so you know too.
So would it be appropriate to, like on your website, or when you give out the information for fee waiver application, to have that as a Google form where they could go on and
Yeah, we
create them
have
rather
the
than
form
write it out?
online, but yeah, a lot of them do go. I am wholeheartedly in favor of non-paper.
Okay.
So if you've got that electronically, but if you're getting a signature from them on application, which I think is still required on the registration, you might want to, if they're doing that through the PDF form, then you want to save it electronically.
Right.
That's, but have, shows that signature.
You just use your food program as your fee waiver?
Yes, and we went to quite an extent in the model policy. You just have to have a little bit of phraseology, that's right, on that application to say you're going to just share it. But yes, that's a wonderful thing. You only have one place, you have to worry about that.
And how long do you want us to keep that documentation?
I think I will clarify that in our informational papers and let you know on that. But I would, how far are we going to go back and monitor? And that's on us. We haven't quite finished our policies and procedures on how we're going to do the monitoring. So as soon as I get that finished up, I will let you guys know through informational papers. But it's just like any other school documents. Heck, at the bank it was only 3 years. We didn't keep anything past 3 years. But I'm sure we'll find just for the time period that it would only be for us when we go back and monitor. Are we ever going to go back more than 2 or 3 years? Probably not. So the current year. But I'll put that in writing for you guys. Our policies.
Is there a question right here?
That's the same question I had.
Yeah.
To quickly clarify on using the free lunch application, so all you would need is to get their permission on the free lunch application to share the information. And we do have that spelled out in the model policy, but simply put, they have to have the option to say no and not have it affect their free lunch application. But it is spelled out more in depth in the model policy. Now, going back to the informing the students about the fee waiver process, the fee waiver policies. So, again, the fee waiver policy should always be there with the fee schedule. In the code, it is actually a component of the fee schedule. It is sufficient to just always have them together. And this is something interesting about the specific phrasing in both code and rule. We are required to be providing students a copy of it. So not just access to it, but a copy. It does not specify whether that is digital or physical, but they need to actually be receiving a copy that is theirs of these documents.
The student or the parent? The student or the
Sorry,
parent?
it does specify the parent, not the
Does it?
student.
Okay.
And I apologize for that phrasing mistake. And then at the end, we already talked about those posters and the applications that also need to be included, but we want to emphasize they should be getting those as well. Now, for fee waiver eligibility, most of these, I think we have pretty well sorted out by this point. A couple things we wanted to emphasize. So we've been talking with DWS, and it has come to our attention that the letter for DWS confirming that they're receiving FEP is probably not the best form of verification. And as they informed us, the letter does not actually say how long they will be receiving benefits. So it could be 1 month old and now invalid, or it could be 4 years old and still valid. And the letter provides no way to know that. What they actually recommended is just a screenshot. There's a page where they can just show, hey, I'm receiving benefits. That is what they recommended, and we're going to be coming up with more guidance on that, but that's not something that was anticipated with the rule.
Screenshot of the letter or a screenshot of?
A screenshot of their current benefits. Just, there's a page that DWS would recommend that the person can print off saying, look, I am currently receiving benefits. Or again, the letter doesn't actually specify any time frame other than the very date. Does that make sense?
So I'm sure when we ask a parent to provide that for us, they're going to be confused. Is there a way that we have that information to direct them where to go? That's
When we provide a better informational paper on it, we'll be getting actual website addresses and stuff, so we can be a little bit more clear, because some parents might have some confusion with that.
And the DWS actually did training on this with their caseworkers to tell them what the screenshot was. And I'll just get a copy of that and put it on our website, and then you guys could use it. So DWS caseworkers have been trained on this too.
Yeah.
So we'll get that put up on our website.
And then the other thing we wanted to emphasize, we have these set categories of they are eligible if they meet this. Pretty clear cut. The rule also goes to say that other students who need help, other students who are unable to pay, this amorphous, what does inability to pay mean? And we don't have a lot of clarification. That is a lot of local decision. But we did want to state that you do need to decide that. You do need to have policies on that. This has actually been a separate court case where the courts reminded the schools that you can't just completely nix this category. You can't have a policy that states you have to meet one of the 5 set categories. We won't be addressing any other students. That was its own individual lawsuit. But as long as you have a policy that you will address those on an individual basis, something for the students to work with. The goal is that no student is excluded for an inability to pay. That's what we're looking for. That's the goal. But again, a lot of that is local control. A lot of that is local decisions. But again, the goal is that no student is denied the ability to participate. Now, one of the things that some schools have looked into is instead of using fee waivers for these other category fee waiver students, is provisions in lieu of fee waiver or service opportunities. Now, the rules give a few options for this. They can be providing tutorial assistance, assistance before or after school, at the school, or general community or home service. Again, a lot of this, or virtually all of it, is to be decided at a local level. And if you guys think of something that doesn't fit one of these categories, you can let the state board know. We can get it added to that. But right now, these are pretty broad categories that would capture most service opportunities. What does need to be said is you do need to have a policy to guide this if you are going to be providing these options for the students. It does specify you have to have a policy on it, and it has to go with federal labor laws. This gets a little bit complicated for younger students. For the students that are under 14, we've been unable to find options that would meet both the school rules and the federal labor laws. For the older students, for the 14 and 15-year-olds, there's just some time constraints for what service they might provide. I will leave it to you guys to see those. We'll be posting these slides, so you don't need to go and memorize these right now. But the general idea is if you're going to be providing service opportunities for 14 and 15-year-olds, there's the time constraints, and for any students, no hazardous work. Now, a lot of schools have chosen not to go this route. They've said it's a lot of administrative work. But some schools are very fond of it. And again, that is a decision for you guys to make. Now, that's all I have for this. Are there any questions on fee waivers? Now,
On the application of the fee waiver, there's some questions. Does that come later?
I believe actually now would probably be the best time.
In relationship to PTA events, and I know we've talked about different things, we have some question debate in our district that when, for example, the all-night party at the end of the year, which we get state grants for and different things, PTA is pretty good at trying to scholarship kids in that talk to them about it, but Is that because obviously it's held at the school, we're using one PTA event. They have PTA dances. We even have, which is carnivals for elementary age kids. So there are a lot of PTA events where we obviously are there because our students are there, but it's their fundraiser, their ability to try to make money. If they don't make the money, they can't run their event. So we're looking in our district at schools of up to 70% or higher in elementaries of fee waiver. And so we're trying to understand, do we have to somehow communicate with these PTA and say you are required to allow all these kids to participate in any activity? Or I'm just giving you that kind of a start.
Going back to the slide at the beginning of what a fee is, a fee includes anything that is school sponsored, supported, or provided. It is possible for some of these events to maybe happen in a way that is completely non-school provided or supported. Though there is some question about whether or not a PTA can do anything that's not school sponsored in some way. But as soon as an event is school sponsored, it is subject to fee waivers. So
the thought would be, and that we would be sharing our fee waiver information with the PTA.
Some of the logistics, that would probably not be appropriate. For some of these events, the easiest way that we found, though again, some of this is for you guys to make decisions on, is to let students be able to get tickets to the carnival beforehand at the school, both fee waiver, non-fee waiver, so they can just come to the front office and get their wristband or whatever it is that gets them into the carnival. Or there are other ways to do it, but you're right, sharing that information with just general members of the community would not be appropriate with FERPA law. Did that answer the question?
Not happily, but it answered.
Something that has come up. There's a question online.
Yes, so they said, I can waive the entrance to the PTA event, but do I need to include the amount raised by a certain family toward their maximum fee charged?
So this brings in a few different things. Because it is not a required group fundraiser, which is an easy category, and some of the things in a carnival or whatnot are, it gets a little tricky is the easy answer, and we can answer this more in depth later. Because where do you start drawing the lines between things at the carnival? Personal discretionary purchases from a concession stand are not covered by fee waiver rules. But the entrance is. And some of this we're just going to have to explain a little bit more. And we can write something up to explain this better. If I just sit here and try to talk through it, I'll probably just stumble over my words a few more times. But in general, any fees paid towards a school-sponsored event count towards the school student maximum. But with some of these events, it gets a little bit situational, and we can address those later.
So could you have a free entrance and then charge for tickets and not have a fee waiver for those tickets? So tickets, you would go to the different booths at the carnival. If you just did away with the entrance fee.
So this is something that's come up. The fee rule is participation. So any fee required for student participation in a school-sponsored event or activity. So if they cannot participate without paying, then it would become subject to fee waiver. So if the only things to do there they have to pay to do, then they need a way to have those waived. So the entire goal of this is to not create haves and have-nots. And we understand that creates some logistical complications. But again, the goal is for all of these students to be able to participate. So again, we understand that there are some technical questions about it, but again, if they can't participate without paying a fee in a school-sponsored event, there has to be a way for them to have that waived.
In that case, could you have a policy written that if you're on a fee waiver, you get so many dollars worth of tickets automatically? Then if they get there and they have some money and want to do more, they can buy more
For
tickets?
some of those, we would have to look on a case-by-case basis. But for some of these other situations for how you want to handle it, if you make it clear in your policy how you are going to be handling it in a way that is not, again, creating haves and have-nots.
Right.
That's what we're looking for. That's the goal. So we would have to see the policy before we
Yeah.
give it a final stamp. But again, that is the goal. And if your policy manages to do that, it would be an appropriate policy.